It's good to be back with you. It's good to be praying again here in a beautiful New Jersey Wednesday morning. A little bit of touching of snow, nice and cool in the air. A great time to gather in the church and pray. And welcome my prayer warriors here. We're all back together again. We still sing an old song, we're together again. We're together again to pray today. And good to see everybody here. Good to see you there. And today I'm going to talk to you about a very important topic, and it's our faith. Our faith is everything. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Without faith, we can't do anything. And so I want to, by looking at the life of David, an incident in his life, I want to show you and learn with you the signs that you are losing your faith. The signs that you are losing your faith. Because believe it or not, David, the man of faith, the man whose heart was after God, lost his faith and ended up in a place he never thought he would be. So I'm going to read from 1 Samuel chapter 27, and then we're going to be detectives together. And we're going to pick out the signs that will happen in our lives to show us that we're losing our faith. I don't mean our salvation. I mean our faith in God's promise. Our faith in what God has told you or told me to do. That's what faith I'm talking about, not in our salvation faith. So listen to 1 Samuel 27. If you remember, David is on the run. Saul has been relentlessly trying to kill him, but God has been protecting him every single time. And God's hand is on David, and David has the promise that he will be the king. That's the promise. But listen to what happens in chapter 27. But David kept thinking to himself, someday Saul is going to get me. The best thing I can do is escape to the Philistines. Then Saul will stop hunting for me in Israelite territory, and I will finally be safe. So David took his 600 men and went over and joined Achish, son of Maoh, the king of Gath. David and his men and their families settled there with Achish at Gath. These are the Philistines who were his enemies, the enemies of God. Now he's settling there. And then he actually starts working with the king as one of the king's warriors, the king of the Philistines' warriors. And it says in verse 8, David and his men spent their time raiding the Gershites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, people who lived near Shir, toward the land of Egypt. David did not leave one person alive in the villages he attacked. He took their sheep, goats, cattle, donkeys, camels, clothing before returning home to the Philistines. Where did you make your raids today? Achish would ask. David would reply, against the south of Judah. He was lying, saying he was attacking Israel, but he was really attacking other peoples. No one was left alive to come to Gath and tell where he had really been. All right, so now we're going to put on our detective hats, and we're going to see the signs that you're losing your faith. It starts out very bad. It says, but David kept thinking to himself. Kept thinking to himself. Now, it's good to think. But if you're like me, sometimes you can overthink something. God gives you a promise, and you start thinking, I don't see it. What's happening here? It's not working out. And you think, and you think, and you think. Instead of relying, instead of saying, no, God said this, and that's the end. He's thinking over and over to himself. And I'm sure he's awake in the middle of the night thinking about it. That what's going to happen? Saul's going to kill him. And when we start overthinking and getting in that obsessive thinking about the situation, that's a sign number one that we're losing our faith in God's promise. So he's thinking to himself. Also notice the word himself. He's not like speaking to another person of faith, getting their feedback. It's like he's isolated himself and he's thinking this himself. That happened to anyone here? You can start thinking and start going down, down, down. But if you gather together with other people like we do here or on Sunday, your thinking changes. Or a brother or a sister can pray for you and your thinking will change. So it's a sign when you're thinking to yourself, it's a sign you're starting to lose your faith. Then he says, someday Saul is going to get me. This is David, the guy who killed Goliath, the guy who God has protected for years now, the guy who has the promise to be king. And now he's focused on the most negative thing possible, that Saul is going to get him and kill him. That's his focus. No longer on God, no longer praising God, no longer worshiping God, no longer inquiring of God at all. Now he's focused on what's going to happen. That's bad. That's bad. That's sign number 2. Then he says, the best thing I can do is escape to the Philistines. So he's taking matters into his own hands. The best thing I can do. Doesn't even mention God. What's God going to do? Doesn't say, well, I'm going to start to pray to God now. No, he says, the best thing I can do. I'm going to take matters into, I'm going to resolve this situation myself. Now, to me, that sounds like what Saul did when he lost being king. He didn't wait for God to bring the answer. And David is not waiting. I got to take matters into my own hands right now. The best thing I can do. And when we start saying the best thing I can do, we're leaving God out of the equation. We're leaving God out. Maybe we should say the best thing God can do, or the best thing I can do, is trust in God. He will bring the answer in his time. But he says, no, the best thing I can do, and actually the best thing he says he can do, is to escape to the Philistines. They're the enemies. They're ungodly people. They're demonic people. They worshipped idols. They had child sacrifice. All of these kind of things. And that's the best thing he can do, is join them. So now, when we start saying what's the best thing we can do, that's another sign we're losing our faith. And then when you become partners with darkness, that's a tremendous sign that you're starting to lose your faith. He now wants to be partners with the Philistines, a man of God. It's a big sign he's losing his faith. Then he says, then Saul will stop hunting for me in Israelite territory, and I'll finally be safe. Where's the safest place to be? In God's hands. The safest place. The safest place to be is where God wants you to be. If God calls you to go and be a witness in Ukraine right now, in the eastern part where the biggest danger is, that's the safest place for you to be. The safest place to be is in God's will for your life. The safest place to be is following God's promise, continuing to do what God told you to do. That's the safest place. And so David has lost his faith in the promise, because he's now saying he's going to finally be safe with the enemies if he compromises with the enemies. So David took 600 men and went over and joined Achish. And I would just say that all those people went with him. Sometimes you have to be careful who we follow. Someone can say, well, this is not working out. We got to go this way. We got to do this. We got to change this. We got to stop this ministry. It's not working out. We got to do something else. You hear from God and you follow what God tells you to do. You don't join the enemy and then bring people with you. And you don't follow people who are joining the enemy either. And then it says they settled there. So they said, we're going to stay here. Now David's exchanging what God had for him for what the world had for him. That's a bad exchange, my friends. A bad, bad exchange. Whatever God has for you, however hard it is, however far off it seems, is better than anything the world can promise or give you. He's settled there. And then what he starts to do is he starts attacking other villages of other Philistines, but he starts lying to the king and saying he's attacking the Israelites. So now he's lying. Lying is a sin. He was violating one of the commandments by lying. And when you find yourself that you have to lie or you have to compromise your integrity in certain ways, that's a sure sign you're losing your faith. You're losing your faith if you have to compromise instead of trusting God. So those are the signs that we're losing our faith. So what do we do? Because I'm sure you can connect with one or the other of those. What we're doing today is important. Gathering together to pray. Building our faith. Feeding our faith. Being aware that the enemy is after one thing in your life. Your faith in what God has told you to do. So today we're going to pray. If you need a prayer request, maybe you're in that situation, send me a comment. You can send me an instant message, or you can put a comment below. We will pray for you. I will pray for you. Or you can click the link below and send a prayer request. And if you're in the New Jersey area, I encourage you to come to Crossroads Church this Sunday and gather with others. It will lift up your faith. So we're going to pray. And remember, today is Wednesday. It's time for us to pray.